Okay, so let's wrap up here. So we explored in the previous lecture the future possibility of being able to conceive and potentially even gestate new human beings in laboratories, and being able to the possibility of being able to skip entirely those old school methods of reproduction that relied on sex and natural fertilization and pregnancy. There's an additional medical technology that exists that will likely be made available to people in certain parts of the world in the very near future for creating new human beings. And that's human reproductive cloning, where we take the genetic makeup of an existing person and use that as a basis to create a new and separate human being that is genetically identical to its donor. So once again, we're in this position of having to draw lines that help us distinguish between that which is morally permissible from that which is morally prohibited from that which is morally obligatory. So the question here is human reproductive cloning morally different from natural pregnancy? Is there a morally relevant difference between these two methods of reproduction that would justify us labeling some as morally permissible, some as morally prohibited, or some as morally obligatory? So this, like I said, this technology currently exists. People have used it to clone non-human animals. Dolly the sheep is a famous example. There are certain parts of the country, the United States, where people are cloning pets, beloved pets that they've lost. So the technology is there. The question for us is, well, is it morally permissible for me to create a new me? A me version 2.0? I could take my genetic profile, create a new and separate human being that is genetically identical to me, and raise me as my own. Is that morally permissible, or is that morally off limits? Now, we can once again consider these kinds of questions from a utilitarian point of view. And think about some of the benefits that would come from allowing the use of this technology for human reproduction. It would provide an additional means for allowing infertile couples to have genetically related offspring, right? They would have genetic related offspring. They would have biologically related to the children who are biologically related to them that they could raise. We could, on the other hand, instead of genetically cloning ourselves to raise a new mini-me, we could simply clone our bodies as a kind of storehouse, to have a storehouse of organs and tissue that we could access were we to ever need it. And we wouldn't have to worry about the organs and tissues being incompatible with our own genetic makeup and thereby getting rejected. So I could have a me version 2.0 that is there as a liver and kidneys and lungs and hearts and eyeballs, should I ever come to need a donation of one of those things. We could replace a lost or important person, just like those people who are cloning their pets. Well, maybe we could clone our grandparents and weirdly raise them as our own. Or maybe we just lose a loved one. We lose a child, for example. We could have a genetically identical version of that child come back into existence. And of course, a real benefit would be is that we could just copy and paste and duplicate the super talented, super creative, super smart, super athletic people. And then we all benefit from an increase of their creative and intellectual products. We could take those super smart geniuses and have more of them and thereby create more technology, more knowledge, have more ingenuity existing in the world. But of course, I know as I'm rattling off all of these benefits, you're thinking like, okay, dude, but there are some definite downsides here. Yes. Think about the psychological distress a clone would experience. Imagine that your parents came to you today and said, you know, I know you've been under this illusion that you're our offspring, but actually you're the clone of some child in some foreign country that we adopted some number of years ago, however old you are. Okay, that would probably be fairly psychologically distressing. You'd wonder who this other person was or is that donated the DNA that became you. It would likely diminish the worth and respect for the individual human life if we could recreate it so cheaply, right? In other words, and by cheaply, I don't necessarily mean financially. I just mean it's so easy to create the new you with this technology. And of course, you can imagine this is going to be a technology that's abused by governments, right? They're going to create an army of super soldiers potentially, or they're going to create an army of supercomputer hackers and hack into the world's electrical grids. Okay, so there are definitely downsides. So the question I'm putting to you that I want to talk with you about on the discussion board is, would it be okay to use human reproductive cloning for the purpose of creating new human beings? And if not, why not? And if so, why so? And would you use this technology ever yourself?